I'm going to talk about a very complex topic here, and we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve and what they're doing right now in order to prevent the financial markets from going into a whirlwind. If you've watched my previous videos, whenever there is fear in the market, what is the one thing that investors run to every single time? Okay, maybe you haven't been watching my videos. It's the US Treasury. Okay, so if you look at the interest of the U.S. Treasury, which is predicated on supply and demand, the less demand, the higher the interest rate. The more demand, the lower the interest rate. So we have U.S. Treasury interest rates. What they're paying is dropped very low, extremely low, which means that there's not a lot of confidence in the marketplace. So that's the first thing that you need to kind of watch and understand. So the Federal Reserve, being the smart guys that they are, a lot smarter than myself, understand that there could be a crisis that is coming on. And the one thing that they want to prevent is a run on the banks. So if I have money in a money market account or other accounts, if I get in trouble and I need that liquidity or the return rate drops too low, I may potentially have a run on my money. So if you understand the banking system, you understand that banks need reserves in order to lend money. They need to have a certain amount of capital or cash in hand in order to lend money. So when banks' capital typically gets low, they're in a position where they have to sell to recapitalize in order to be able to lend money again. So what the Federal Reserve is doing is they've increased their repo purchases. So this is very complicated, but I'll give you the layman version so you can hopefully understand. Banks have two types of assets. They have cash and they have loans, or I'll just classify those as IOUs. So IOUs could be mortgage-backed securities, they can be treasuries, or whatever other loans that they have that they've loaned out that people owe them money. So those loans aren't necessarily cash, but they are value, right? Because it gives the income stream to the bank over a set period of time. So when banks need liquidity, what they can do is they can sell these loans to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve will buy them. When the banks agree to buy it back at a slightly higher price, typically within the next 24 or 48 hours. This gives the bank a much needed liquidity that they need, short-term liquidity at the time, in order to meet their demand and also to continue to be able to lend money. And that's very important for our economy. If money and financing freezes up, the economy typically goes down. Whenever you look at any economic collapse, when it deepens, it's because banks stop lending money. So the Fed is very cognizant of that, and they want to make sure that banks are in a position to continue to lend money and fund businesses. That's very important. So the Fed will buy their debt or their IOUs and give the bank much needed collateral, and the bank agrees to buy that back at a slightly higher rate within 24 to 48 hours. So we just got to a point over past this Wednesday, the Fed has jumped their repo purchases up to about $255 billion. Okay, that's a lot of cash. The purpose of the cash is to kind of keep the money market rate consistent, and also to, again, keep liquidity in the marketplace. So if the market is liquid, banks feel comfortable being able to lend money to me and you and others, so that the economy kind of keeps churning. We don't know where the market is headed, and we don't know how long this coronavirus will last. But the big impacts of the economy is money has to circulate. People have to buy, people have to spend, people have to borrow. Those are the things that keep our economy growing. Those are the things that keep the economy healthy. When those things stop, the economies tend to have issues, particularly recessions. So in order to keep confidence, banks have to continue to lend money. And in order to keep people being able to pay that money, we have to find a way to keep people employed or keep people having money in their pocket. Now, it's not necessarily a business's job in order to keep employing people. Why? Because businesses typically serve the owners or the partners if it's or the investors if it's a public company, right? The goal, however, of the government is to make sure that there isn't unemployment. Because once there's unemployment, what happens? There's a run on the bank typically because those reserves get eaten up. Then once those reserves get eaten up, it becomes a snowball effect. People can't spend money. People start saving money. They can't borrow money. And the economy goes into a whirlwind. So this can be potentially a lot more catastrophic than you may be thinking about. I mean, I know you're talking about the mask and the gloves and the hand sanitizer and things like that. But the real effects of the economy is not necessarily people getting sick. It's the financial part of it that is potentially very dangerous, not only to America but also to the world at large. So if you kind of look at it, and I'll give you a small scenario. What happens if you work hourly? What happens if your job lays you off? Or they lay somebody in your family off. They lay your wife or your spouse off, and you guys collectively pay your bills. What happens to your household? What happens to your kids in the daycare? What happens to that daycare when they can't collect the money that you owe them for their kids, or they can't? The parents of the kids that they watch can no longer afford to pay, and the landlord that has the building that is relying on that income to pay the mortgage can't pay that mortgage because those people lost their job and they can't afford to pay their rent anymore, or their car note, or their car insurance. You see where this potentially goes. So it goes into a whirlwind. So in the next few weeks, we'll see how the Federal Reserve and the government respond to potential cash flow issues and how they expect to handle how businesses are going to handle deficiencies in income and managing to continue to pay employees without laying them off. So those are things that we need to watch and things that can potentially make or break this quote unquote epidemic or pandemic. I'm not a good vocabulary right now, but those are things that we need to watch to see where exactly these goes in the financial markets. But in the meantime, continue to buy stock. Real estate, people still need a place to live, but I'm going to talk about in the next video how this could potentially affect real estate.